Hello and welcome to HomeTech. HomeTech is a podcast dedicated to discovering new and emerging technologies for the home. We discuss news about the Internet of Things, home automation, and more. I'm Seth Johnson in Florida, and I'm joined by Jason Griffin in Los Angeles. Hi, and welcome to HomeTech. I'm Seth Johnson. I'm joined by Jason Griffin. Jason, how's it going?
It's going great, Seth. How are you?
Doing well. Trying to, I think I'm seeing the light finally at the end of the tunnel here with some of these projects, but the next couple of weeks we'll see what happens. There's always the punch-out items that you never see, like that just come up right at the end, and you think you're done, and oh no, you're not done yet. That doesn't work.
Yeah, we talked about that a little bit last week. It's with the world of professional home automation and systems integration. It's sometimes feels like a never-ending punch list, and we're always in there late in the projects and tweaking things and getting the bugs out and making sure everything is working perfectly and the homeowner's happy. And so I can totally relate. I know where you're at.
Well, thanks for the sympathy.
Yeah,
definitely could use it.
Hang in there, buddy.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks. So we had some good news this weekend. We had a winner on our Wemo contest we were promoting there on Twitter. I think you know a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I can't remember the exact episode, but if people go to HomeTech.fm and look on the shows section, they'll be able to find it very easily. Not too long ago, we did an episode on Wemo specifically, which is a home automation offering by Belkin International. They're a very big company, and they're making a push into home automation. And I had the opportunity actually to go down there and take a tour of their facility, which is very close to where I live here in Los Angeles, and really interesting to see what they had going on. And they were kind enough to offer up some of their light switches. They make smart light switches that basically you install them very easily, and they connect to your Wi-Fi system, and you're able to control them from the Wemo app. And they offered those up as part of a promotion for a recent update to their firmware or their software that added some enhanced features. And we had a winner on Twitter, and his name was Mitch G. I won't say his last name in the interest of privacy, but Mitch, if you're listening, congratulations on the win, and we really hope that you enjoy the Wemo light switches.
Yeah, and let us know what you do with them, Mitch, because I know I've kind of followed Mitch around. He's done a couple of other things in the Control4 world, and kind of interested to see what he ends up doing with them. So, absolutely. And I mentioned the website briefly, and I just before we jump into the in the news, and there was a couple of interesting stories this week, and then we've got I think a really interesting main topic. We're going to talk a little bit about video distribution in the home and some of the considerations about that. But before we jump into that, I just kind of wanted to say a few quick words to the listeners and just let them know that we really appreciate them taking the time to listen and to join us. And, if you like what you hear, make sure you cruise by the HomeTech.fm website. We've got a feedback form on there. Maybe leave a comment. Let us know how we're doing. And also stop by on iTunes and leave us a review, hopefully a 5-star. But we understand if not, if you have some constructive criticism, by all means, let us know. We want to know how we're doing. But yeah, if they could take a minute, stop by iTunes, leave us a review, it would be tremendously appreciated. Absolutely. And those really help get our show promoted up in the top of those lists on iTunes, and it gets the word out there. So we thank you very much for listening, and we really appreciate it if you go just take a couple minutes and leave one of those reviews. We would definitely appreciate and welcome the feedback. So absolutely, just trying to spread the good word, right? Yeah, exactly. Cool. So, like I said, our main topic in this episode is going to be video distribution, which I know is can be a topic of a little bit of confusion for people who are just entering the home technology, home automation space. So we're going to touch on that a little bit and try to clear up some of the misconceptions, some of the pros and cons of video distribution. But there were a few stories in the news this week that I thought we should touch on before we jump into the main topic. Yeah. First, it looks like iControls
and Netgear have teamed up to launch a touchscreen. And it's interesting. It seems like every week iControl is doing something new and innovative here in this space. I think we were just talking about them last week. They had just bought Piper, I guess. Is that the same company?
Yeah, actually, yes. Well, that is true, and we talked about that. But last week, specifically, we were talking about the offerings from Universal Remote, or URC, which had partnered up with iControl just recently. And I mean, that just illustrates the point. There's been a lot of conversation about iControl on the show lately. They seem to be making a lot of moves, and I think it's great. iControl, for people who may not know, is sort of a white label solution. Consumers would be more familiar with iControl's offerings in the form of the home automation products offered by companies like Comcast and Xfinity and other, cable providers. So you'll see their commercials online where they're offering home automation, home monitoring services. Well, they're all using sort of a similar back end, which is provided by iControl. And iControl has been making a lot of moves lately to sort of enhance their offering. So I think in general, for the world of do-it-yourself home automation, the fact that iControl is making all these moves is generally pretty exciting.
Oh, no doubt. And this piece with Netgear, the model number is the STS 7000, which is a great model number. I don't understand some of these tech model numbers sometimes. They make no sense to me. But
yeah, this one's at least somewhat intuitive. The security touchscreen 7000.
Okay, fine. Okay,
that's what it stands for. I had to do a little bit of digging. I just actually came across it, but yeah, it's
well, there you go.
Feels a bit arbitrary sometimes.
I thought it was shuttle transport system, like the space shuttle, but okay. So I'm in Florida. All right, but this one looks like it has built-in AirPlay. It runs on Android, but it has built-in AirPlay for connecting an Apple device and streaming something to it. Energy monitoring, lighting control, Google Maps integration, so you can get traffic alerts and whatnot, and weather tracking and forecasting, along with news and other alerts. So that's kind of cool. It sounds like a neat piece. I'm just kind of curious to see what it comes out and does in the end.
Yeah, I think it's really cool, and I think it's going to be, of course, one of those things where if it's tied into that sort of closed ecosystem of say like a Comcast home automation system, it's going to work great, and it gives the end user or consumer a chance to get into sort of having a nice portable touchscreen where they can do a lot of cool home automation features, and they don't have to pay, thousands of dollars for somebody to come in and set that up. So overall, I think it's great. I think this is a no-brainer. I think the partnership makes a lot of sense for both of the parties, Netgear and iControl. And I think, obviously it'll be interesting to see how it plays out, but I think this is generally going to be a good thing for all parties.
Yeah, and like you said at the beginning, that they're definitely on the move. So, really curious to see what they end up with. Here in a couple of months, maybe a year or so down the road, we'll all have iControl sitting in our house, because it seems like it's an interesting product that they're finally just kind of moving more into the consumer world, I suppose, to offer products to consumers directly.
I mean, they're quietly making a lot of moves, and again, they're not really a consumer-facing brand, so it's not something that's overtly, apparent to a lot of people. But for people who kind of watch this industry like you and me, it's pretty clear that iControl is being very, they're being very aggressive right now.
No doubt.
One of the other stories I thought was interesting that I saw come across this week is an integration that was revealed between DropCam and SmartThings.
Yeah, and first off, let's talk a little bit about, we've talked about SmartThings in the past, but we haven't really talked about DropCam. DropCam's this little camera that you drop in place. and it gets on your internet, and you can kind of look in and see what's going on in your house. It records video out to the cloud, so you can kind of go back and see what happened if someone was in your house or something like that. I had a friend that wanted to see when their real estate agent was coming into the house and what they were doing, so I kind of nudged him over and said, "Hey, why don't you grab one of these drop cam things and see how it works out?" And I think he ended up doing that. But I mean, it's a very low cost. I want to say it's around $200, something like that, maybe less.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually don't know offhand, but I'm sure it's in that ballpark. And I recently, one of the projects that we're finishing up right now, the client is he's a software guy. He's pretty techie, and not to say that you have to use this product by any means, but he's just into this technology in general. And he wanted to have some cameras up during the final phase of construction, because during that phase, you're actually starting to move some of your valuable products into the house, but you've still got a lot of workers moving in and out and movers and all of that sort of thing. So it was very, very simple for him to come in and plug a few of these drop cams into an electrical outlet and put them on the Wi-Fi, and there you go. You've got cloud monitoring of your home. You can, watch those cameras from anywhere you are, and it's a great product. And we've talked briefly about smart things. For anyone who might not know, which I think most people probably do, but it's sort of a hub is kind of the term people are using for these technologies, where it's looks like a little router you plug into your network, and it kind of brings all these technologies together. And recently, the integration between DropCam and SmartThings was announced. But what's interesting to note is that this integration is not officially sanctioned by DropCam.
This has happened before, I think, with Nest, right? So somebody did this recently. Yeah. A bunch of companies have done this recently with Nest. So kind of interesting. It's not sanctioned, but it works. But it's one of those things that people will strive to get integration any way they can, whether they have to hack or find a backdoor or a secret password or something. They'll try and get what they have to work. So I think it's cool. Hopefully, DropCam opens up some of their integration to other people, I guess. But maybe this is a step in that direction. I'm not sure, but
yeah. So I mean, the takeaway there for your typical end user is that you can make these two systems talk to each other. Somebody was smart enough to figure out how to make that work, and you can absolutely take advantage of it. But you're not guaranteed anything. In other words, there may come like a firmware update someday that your system might do automatically, or you might prompt it to do it. But either way, that update, it could break things. And at that point, that it is what it is. There's not going to be any support from either of those manufacturers. So that's one of the things to kind of understand between, the world of smart things, sort of Revolve, do-it-yourself home automation. There are some integrations that get released that people don't necessarily realize are quote unquote unsanctioned. And it's all well and good. And the fact that people are out there tinkering and making this stuff work is really healthy for the industry in general, in my opinion. But as an end user, you're not guaranteed anything. So that's just something to keep in mind.
Yeah. But, sometimes it's harder for these guys to break things and take those support calls. Why doesn't this work with SmartThings anymore? It's harder for them to do that than it is for them to just kind of go on with the status quo.
Absolutely. So, no, I don't think that they would. I don't think either party is interested in intentionally breaking that integration. But if something that they do inadvertently does break it, you're not really going to get a high level of support for that.
Right, exactly. It's unsupported. Feel free to your mileage may vary, as they say.
Exactly.
So looks like we have one more thing here on our news, is that Time Warner announced that they had record earnings, or record best ever quarter for their intelligent home platform, which is pretty cool. Like, it kind of says that there's a mass movement going on right now, at least in some circles, for home automation systems in general.
Yeah, I think that the story is indicative of broader consumer awareness of the technology. And I think that the offerings, we've talked about it before, the offerings by these internet service providers like Time Warner and Comcast and Cox, I think generally they're good for the home automation industry at large because they promote awareness. There are pros and cons to it. You get a certain level of workmanship and functionality, and it kind of is what it is. You get what you get. But I think generally speaking, this bodes very well for home automation. I'm happy to see that they're getting broader market penetration with it, and that more people are becoming aware of this technology in general.
Yeah, and this system looks more aligned with a kind of a traditional security system. I mean, it kind of looks like it would compete with the ADT Pulse system, which is similar. Basically, it looks like a security system that you can operate with your smartphone, but it may have some other tie-ins, like with lighting, and maybe you can change the channels on your DVR or something. I don't have Time Warner, but I'm not familiar with the system. But it looks like a basic security system, which could explain some of the higher numbers here.
Yeah, I mean, I think we kind of touched on that in our last episode. In the news section of that, we had talked about iControl and how they were now offering universal remotes. And the takeaway there was that there's a little bit of a borderline between, most of these home automation offerings. They look a lot like home security offerings, right? I mean, they're basically designed to give you some home monitoring, give you camera functionality and that sort of thing. But really the fully integrated control of like the media room or the family room is relatively uncharted territory. So I think that still stands as the case. But I do see a level of adoption with Time Warner and presumably with the other providers as well that, again, I think bodes well for the home automation market at large.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think they're going to be doing any video distribution systems in the future, though.
No, probably not, which is, absolutely a nice segue into our main topic, which is video distribution. And I think it's a great topic. I'm excited to chat with you about it. I think it's a subject of a lot of confusion with people when they're building a new home or remodeling an existing one, to kind of understand sort of what video distribution is and the differences between that and a quote unquote traditional, or as we might refer to it, a decentralized video system. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the differences between those two. And then obviously we're going to talk about why or why not, right? The pros, the cons, like why you might want to go with one versus the other if you're in that situation where you're building a new home or you're remodeling your home and you're trying to figure out which one you should do. And then from there, we'll talk a little bit about if you do decide that you want to go with a distributed system, what are some of the design and wiring considerations that you're going to be faced with if you decide to go that route.
Right. So, I mean, first, it'd probably be good to just kind of talk about what is video distribution, because it's not one of those items that even people coming into my shop, my showroom, would know what in the world it is. It's kind of an industry inside term that we use to describe a particular system that is designed with the video sources in one centralized location and TV monitors that can play those video sources located throughout the house or building. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be limited to a residence. I mean, I think most video distribution systems I can think of, the big ones at least, are in larger commercial venues like stadiums, sports stadiums, where you have hundreds of TVs, around a stadium, and they may only have they may need high definition broadcast, internal broadcast of the game that's going on in the stadium throughout the areas underneath the stands. I mean, that's kind of the best visualization. Each one of those TVs has a line that runs to it, but it all goes back to a centralized place or a centralized room where the broadcast takes place.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a good thing to point out because it sort of makes the concept clear to people in a sort of easy fashion if they're not already familiar with video distribution. The idea is that you can minimize the number of sources you need. So, Seth, obviously, you talked a little bit about in a big stadium, like a pro AV or a commercial market is very common. But in residential, which is obviously where our focus is, it's not as intuitive to people because they may have not ever even thought of video in that sort of way. So
probably
one of
not.
Yeah, exactly. So one of the common things that I like at the outset of a project, if I'm talking to a client and I'm trying to describe the concept of video distribution, I think one of the most useful ways to think about it is if you're in a house that, say, you're building a house, and let's say it's a 4 or 5 bedroom house, but maybe it's just a husband and wife and one child, and they've got a couple extra bedrooms like as guest rooms or something, right? So that's I think a fairly common scenario. If you were going with a traditional decentralized system, you would think of it in terms of having to have a cable box or a satellite box in every single room that you're going to have a TV, right? So with a video distribution system, what we do is we wire everything back to a central location, and then what you're able to do is you're able to have a limited number of satellite boxes, say his, hers, and maybe guest or something like that. You can have 3 sources, and any one of those 3 sources is available on any one of those 5 TVs. So we're able to distribute that video signal on demand to whichever TV you want to watch it on.
Right, and that's kind of where you kind of run up against a wall, because cable boxes can do that these days. But one, you're usually have to pay for those extra cable boxes that you'd have, and this isn't limited to just cable boxes or satellite receivers. You can distribute anything you'd like a Blu-ray player or almost a DVD player, an Apple TV or a Roku or something like that. Anything that has a video output, you could take and input into the system. All of this could be located in a central place and piped out to each individual TV when it's needed. And it really helps save on really the cabinet space. That's where us integrators hate to work on. I'm sure that Jason probably has a couple of stories about that, and I certainly do.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We just try and avoid those cabinets. They're always the wrong size for equipment and always really hot and cramped places to work in. And if you ever, I go into a lot of clients' homes that didn't go down the route of putting things away in a closet or something, and the door is always open on the cabinet to let all the heat out and everything. So
yeah. No, absolutely, and it's definitely a consideration to make, and we're branching into now sort of the why or why not. One of the main considerations there is, like Seth was saying, is it's a sort of a design consideration. It makes it a lot easier to sort of centralize all your gear when you're talking about heat considerations. And with AV, that's one of the things that gets overlooked all the time. I mean, we see it all the time. Even on the professionally installed systems where we're urging people every step of the way to properly ventilate their cabinets and give us enough space, we still have to fight those battles. And so giving that equipment proper ventilation and room to breathe it actually becomes easier when you do a distributed video system, because then you've got one like AV closet or rack location down in the basement, and you have to worry about proper ventilation and breathability in that area. But everywhere else in the house, it's a no-brainer. You're done. Your cabinets are fine. You don't have to worry about the dimensions of those cabinets or if they're breathable. If you got to put a vent in the top of them, shove some fans in there. It's just something that gets overlooked all the time, and it's one of the sort of, I would say, hidden benefits of doing a distributed video system.
No, definitely. And also, I mean, the goal behind this whole thing is to not have that equipment in that room, right? So you don't want to see a cable box with, cables coming out of it and going to the wall sitting under your TV. All you want to see on the wall is the TV. And it just looks so much better that way, and it can work and perform just as well with the cable box remote located back into the video closet or like you said, down in a rack somewhere.
Yeah, and I think the market in general is becoming a little bit more aware of the value of sort of hidden wires. Have you recently seen, this is a bit of a tangent, but have you recently seen the DirecTV commercials, the wires are weird commercials?
No, I haven't.
Okay, well, I won't even try to describe them here, but we'll include them in the show notes, and they're pretty hilarious. But, the general idea being that, the market in general, consumers, our audience, people in general are starting to realize the value of just a nice, clean installation where all you see is the TV on the wall and everything else is completely out of sight. And that's what a video distribution system is all about.
I'm watching this now. This is kind of funny. I get it.
Yeah.
I'll put it in the show notes.
They're great. We'll include them in the show notes at HomeTech.fm. People can stop by and check those out. They're actually very funny commercials. They're playing nonstop here in Los Angeles, but maybe it's not the same everywhere.
I tend to skip the commercials, so
yeah. Well, good for you, man.
TiVo.
Yeah.
All right, so back on track, I suppose. So I guess we should probably talk about there's a couple of different types of video distribution systems, and I guess first we can talk about the analog systems. Those are all, I think, all pretty much dead at this point. Like component video, DVD players, Blu-ray players really don't even come with component video or analog outputs on them anymore. They're all HDMI. So, it's kind of like, why even bother even thinking about analog video distribution anymore?
No, I think typically when we come across that, it's just the fact is that it's an old house where the wiring or the infrastructure was pulled before the age of HDMI digital video. And so unfortunately, like you were hinting at, there's not a lot of use for that cable anymore. We're sort of being limited with our ability to even send 1080p, let alone, who knows what's going to happen with 4K over that cabling. So really, unfortunately, we don't relish in this, and we don't enjoy telling clients who call us in to look at their home. But a lot of times when that 5-wire or component or RGB or whatever you call it was pulled, that was state of the art when it was pulled. And it was rock solid. It was an amazing technology when it was.
Oh, yes.
It never failed the way we have issues with HDMI, which maybe we'll talk about in a future episode. But unfortunately, nowadays it's it's kind of useless. Like we're having to just replace it all. So
yeah, and I've walked into a customer's house. It's kind of a takeover job, and exactly what you just said. It's an older house, not terribly old, but I think he probably bought everything from the integrator he was with around the time that the analog systems were just about to go away. I think it was like right before the cutoff, the analog sunset, so to speak. And you walk through the house and you look at some of the TVs and they're just kind of turning colors, like they're missing red. Some of the balance or the signals aren't getting to the TVs just right, and you don't see that at all with HDMI. It's either has a signal on the TV and it's perfect, or you don't get a picture at all, or you don't get a picture at all. So like you said, it's more of a legacy thing. We thought we'd touch on it because they do exist, and they do work well if you find them. But most everything has moved over to HDMI connections and using HDMI for video.
And I think consumers should know that it's not our fault. We miss component. We loved component. We loved 5-wire. It was rock solid. Like I said, it never failed. Like you hooked that component video distribution system up
and you never got a phone call because it
It's
just
so easy to troubleshoot.
worked.
Yeah.
It just worked. And the reason why we're having to move away from that is a little bit complicated, but it has to do with HDMI is a digital signal, and it's easier for the studios to put copy protection on it. And that's,
Let's just say lawyers.
yeah, basically. Yeah, that's pretty much
that's
it.
all it. Lawyers made us do it. So, so now everything now has HDMI cables on it. And, you know, it does get you a lot more options than Component could do, I suppose. But it's a much more complicated technology than Component video. So that said, we've had, I don't know, I've probably done, probably about 50 or 60 HDMI video distribution systems in my time. You've probably had some experience with the early ones, I suppose, where you kind of had a lot of issues with them.
Yeah, HDMI is it's a tricky thing, and it's unfortunate because it's very difficult for us as integrators to make clients understand that. We go into houses and clients spend a lot of money and they want to distribute HDMI, and then, you know, we get in and we implement the system, and then things just are hit or miss. Like, we get issues that pop up that are hard to replicate, and which makes them very difficult to troubleshoot. And unfortunately, that's just one of the sort of requisite, I guess, costs of doing business when it comes to HDMI in general, is that people just have to understand that it can be a bit of a dark art. We do our best as integrators to minimize that, but, you know, HDMI gives you a lot of functionalities, high definition. There's a ton of data moving down that wire, and there's just a lot of moving parts and a lot of things that can go wrong. So it's just something to consider.
Yeah, but with everything moving over to digital, we've had we have different options for those HDMI type systems. You could just run, get up in the attic and run HDMI cables to all, 4 or 5 of your TVs, and run them back to your closet with the matrix switch. Or you could use like a copper base. So I say copper, it's a untwisted pair. So Cat 5 or most likely Cat 6. So we're not running Cat 5 for very much anymore. And you'll run the Cat 6 out to each individual TV, and there'll be a little device that sits behind the TVs that converts that back to HDMI. So at the matrix itself, you just have the Cat 5s or Cat 6 that will plug right into the matrix, and then at the TV side, there'll be a little conversion box, and it'll convert it back into HDMI for you. Though you can also use fiber. Fiber optic cabling. I know there are a couple of HDMI distribution systems like Crestron's DM system that use fiber optic cable, but of course when we talk about fiber optics, we definitely talk about price.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, there's a lot of different infrastructures you can use, and like I was saying, HDMI is a bit of a tricky animal. You get into a lot of different configurations of systems where you can even have like card-based systems from Savant or Crestron, where your integrator is going to sell you like the chassis as one line item, and then inside of that chassis you can put different cards that have HDMI inputs, and then the outputs could either be straight HDMI or maybe fiber, or maybe they're HD base T and they go over Cat 6, UTP, like you were saying. So there's a ton of different variations on video distribution, and which one that you're going to choose is based largely on it's very specific to your installation. Fiber is often used when you're talking about very, very long distances. So in residential, it's not terribly common, although, like some people just like to pull it to sort of future proof. But typically in residential, everything is going to either go over straight HDMI or over copper, meaning like a Cat 6 or a Cat 5 cable. And then there's even like, to make it even more complicated, there's systems like Just Add Power, which we can link to in the show notes at
at HomeTech.fm, and that system, it's doing something actually quite unique in that it's taking that video signal on the input side. So it comes out of your cable box and it goes into a little box that's basically encoding that signal. And what it's doing is it's actually turning it into network traffic. So at that point, your TV would be completely incapable of recognizing that signal. However, at the other end, there's another just add power box that's able to decode that network signal and turn it into audio visual, HDMI signal that your TV is able to recognize. And so the advantage of that infrastructure is that all of the switching and routing of that signal at that point is actually being deferred to the network. So it gets a little bit convoluted, but it's a very different infrastructure and it has its
a very clever system too.
It's very, very clever, and it has its own set of pros and cons. And so I think the takeaway there is that if you're shopping for a video distribution system, there are a ton of considerations that you have to make. And that's where a professional integrator is going to be able to help you out. Unless, you really want to dig in and do your own research. I mean, there's tons of information out there and you can always figure this stuff out. But, there's just a lot of considerations that you have to make.
Yeah, and I think that your professional integrator is going to probably have a system that they use and they know inside and out. And whatever they recommend is probably going to be what they've had the least problems with, I suppose. I mean, that's definitely the case in our company. We have used a number of systems. And I'd say just about 80% of my installs are video distribution installs now. I mean, it's not like it was before where I'm doing a lot of local systems. We're doing quite a few large homes right now, but even on the smaller homes, we're using video distribution to pipe things around, and it just makes things more convenient. And the homeowner just likes to have a remote and a TV in their room, and that's it. So that's what as a integrator we're trying to do. So I also, we should touch on the price of these systems. They are they can be quite expensive, and it goes from reasonably absurd into extremely absurd in the price ranges.
It definitely does. It definitely does. And it's the bulk of that cost is built into the switching equipment, and there's a lot of complicated technology built into those switchers, and so they're not cheap. I mean, they are coming down, and you can go on like a site like Monoprice and get them for pretty much insanely cheap is what I would say. But again, just to circle back, you might be sacrificing a little bit of reliability there versus, if you pay for one from a high-end company, the circuitry might be a little bit better. You might be getting a little bit more reliability. HDMI is just one of those things. It's either going to work great or it's not at all. And so you're kind of, playing with fire a little bit, in my opinion, if you go with the super, super low end cost-wise systems. But even if you go with the cheaper systems, I think overall probably a distributed video system at the front end is going to cost you a little bit more.
I think so. Yeah.
Just because you got to put the switching equipment in there and all of that, but really the cost savings for a lot of people and a lot of our clients is in the fact that you don't have to pay a monthly bill for a satellite box at every single TV. You can get a his and a hers, and maybe if you have kids, you get one for the kids instead of having, depending on how big your house is, instead of having 5 or 6 satellite boxes, you can get 2 or 3. Over time, that is going to save you some money. Now, it's not an astronomical amount, and in my opinion, the bigger consideration is the stuff we've already talked about in terms of design and convenience. But I think that is something that's worth considering.
Right, and also, there's always, and then you also have to think about how you control these, because now think about, you've taken all the cable boxes and all the Blu-ray players and Rokus and Apple TVs, and you've put them downstairs in the basement where you can't see them directly. So you have to have a control system on top of a system like this. which makes it super easy. You know, you're down to the one button control. You press on, you're watching TV, and that's what an integrator does. That's how we set these systems up. But you will need that for this type of system. It's not something you can avoid.
Yeah, and that's very true.
That becomes pretty painful too. I mean, here's kind of a con, I suppose. That becomes pretty painful when the system does go down. You're completely down. There's really not a backup. So I've kind of gone into some design challenges with a couple of other integrators around the world. A couple of them have been thinking about this, how to design a system that has a fail-safe, a backup where you could, if this control system went completely down, the HDMI system went completely down, how do you make the system foolproof where it kind of has a fail-safe failover? And it's right. Very tough to do.
Yeah, so. It is. Yeah, and I think we've covered it pretty well. I think we're kind of running up against our time limit here, and it's really a pros and cons situation like anything else. And there's a lot to consider there. So, hopefully, go ahead.
Would you recommend having one of these? I mean, in your house, would you want a video distribution system?
To be honest, personally, right now, I wouldn't. With the proliferation of like whole house DVR offerings from companies like DirecTV and all the other cable providers, the content is kind of already getting shared, right? Like across your multiple TVs. We watch a ton of Apple TV here. And so, it's easy enough to just throw a $100 Apple TV in every room and you're done. I wouldn't, for me personally, to be totally honest, but
yeah. No, I'm kind of in the same boat because when we moved in, I wired the house for it. I was ready to go, ready to pull the trigger. And then, I got the TiVo, and I think about the same time they announced that you could like stream between two TiVos. So I just bought another TiVo.
Right.
And then I was just streaming the shows and we've done that since then, and I really haven't been able to fire up the rest of the wiring in the house.
Yeah.
Because I have a smaller house. We only have 2 TVs, and that's what we lived with. But everything's ready to go. It's all wired.
I think there's an absolute, well, I shouldn't say absolute, but I think there's a sort of a break-even point, so to speak, where
definitely
you start to get up above, I don't know, maybe 4, 5, 6 TVs. And at that point, like maybe you need to start thinking about a distribution system. But I think for a lot of, if for our listeners out there who've got a condo or a small house with 2 or 3 TVs, I'll be honest, I don't think distributed video makes sense. And I tell my clients the same thing. It makes sense for certain applications, and for others, it doesn't. And that's where getting a professional's opinion is really gonna help people kind of make that decision.
Very cool, very cool. Well, where can people on the internet find your professional opinion, Jason?
Yeah, absolutely. They can hit me up on Twitter at Jason Griffing, or of course, HomeTech.fm. Leave us some feedback. Again, we would love if people would stop by iTunes if they enjoyed the show and just leave us a review, hopefully a 5-star one. But if not, that's fine too. Just let us know how we're doing. We would absolutely appreciate it. And again, HomeTech.fm or at Jason Griffing.
And you can reach me at on Twitter as well, at Seth P. Johnson. And you can also touch base with me on HomeTech. And also just want to mention one more time that we are listed on Technology.fm. If you like this type of podcast and you like technology podcasts in general, it's a great kind of clearinghouse, so to speak, of some really good podcasts, including us. Yay!
Yeah, absolutely.
On there, so
yeah, and
cool.
And at HomeTech Podcast, lastly, is where we are directly on Twitter. But yeah, we're on Technology.fm, HomeTech.fm as well. We're happy to be a part of the Technology.fm family. It's a great group of shows there, so definitely
absolutely
part of that.
Cool. Well, thanks, Jason. Thanks everybody for listening.
All right. Thanks, Seth. Have a good one.
You take care.